Okay. So I asked you guys to watch this presentation. It's called What Nonprofits Can Learn from Coca Cola. It's by Melinda Gates. Melissa, do you know who Melinda Gates is?
No.
Look at her last name. She's
Oh,
the wife of,
I cannot see properly in the paper,
okay,
in
she's
the
the wife
computer.
of Bill Gates. And, so we all know who Bill Gates is, the founder of Microsoft. Of course, they're not married anymore. This is a presentation from, like about almost like 10 years ago, I think.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying that is that and I know I've said this before, whenever you guys approach a text,
We
take
should
your
read.
time to go, take your time to look at the background information. So here, we have the title, What Nonprofits Can Learn from Coca-Cola. Um, but we also have a little bit of a really short, like, summary, very, very short, like literally like one or two sentences. And it just kind of tells us, it gives us a mindset of where this is, like, it sets up our mind to be prepared for what we're about to read or what we're about to listen to. So we should know that Melinda Gates is the former wife now of Bill Gates. And this is a presentation that she's giving about she's comparing and contrasting two things. And I know that most of you guys in 1101 have already completed the compare contrast essay, but I want to spend a little bit more time on it to show you how compare contrast can actually be meaningful. We don't, when you guys are writing your essays, we don't just want it to be like, Tesla versus another electric car, or Toyota versus Honda, or Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, or Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's. You have to have two items when you're comparing or contrasting, but you should also think about what is the significance. Like, who cares? Who cares is something that I always ask my students. Like, who cares, or so what? And that's what I want you guys to take a look from here. So Melissa, you can see here that she's going to focus on two things just from the title: nonprofits, or non-government organizations, and Coca-Cola,
Hmm.
a capitalist, profitable company. It's not a nonprofit. So she's good. And so she's not just like talking about the differences or similarities, but look at the title. She's saying, here are the things that working in nonprofit we can learn from Coca-Cola. There are things that the Coca-Cola company does well that we can learn from. So, Melissa, so okay, for everybody actually, if you click on read transcript, what you'll get on the right side is basically her words that she's saying during the presentation. But I want you guys to remember that she is not writing an academic essay. She's not writing a college essay. She's giving a real life presentation. So there are parallels between her presentation and the kind of essay you're writing, but do not expect to find everything exactly in the place where we would put it in an essay. This is her presentation, and somebody just wrote her words here in the transcripts. So when I say, like, what is the topic sentence, don't just scroll down and try to find the first sentence of the different paragraphs. You might not find it exactly there. But her organization, her way of letting us know what she's going to talk about, her way of grabbing our attention, they're all there, just like in a basic essay. Melissa, does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. So at the very beginning, Melissa, she talks about how, okay, Melissa, you tell me, you listen to the presentation. How does she start her presentation? What does she talk about?
She talk about her own experience, like how she, why she, who she is, and as an introduction, and then she gave a kind of opinion. Oh, yeah, I think I
Yeah,
remember
very
only.
good. Very good. So at the beginning, when she's talking about her job and, being all over the world and the different things she sees, what do we call that? What do we call that in an essay?
Hook.
We call that the hook. Very good. Excellent. So when we go down a little bit, it's at the very end. She says that, I've been in all these houses. They don't have electricity. They don't even have a bathroom sometimes. They don't have running water. But she always sees what? Even if they don't have running water, they still have what?
Coca Cola.
Coca Cola. Very good, right. And she says that, that makes her think like if they can have, if these poor people living in these, places around the world, they don't have important things that they need to be healthy, to be safe. If they can have Coca Cola, then what is the Coca Cola company doing right that we're not able to do as nonprofits? So, as a nonprofit, she wants to get medications, vaccines, doctors out to these villages. And, nonprofits have a very hard time doing that. But for some reason, Coca Cola can get Sprite and Fanta to these places. Um, so she says right here, Coke's success is relevant because if we can analyze it, learn from it, then we can save lives. Um, but here, so I would say, like, look at what she's saying here. Coke's success is relevant because if we can analyze it, learn from it, we can save lives. So that's why I took a bit of time to study Coke. And I think there are really three things we can take away from Coca Cola. What would you call this, Melissa, where she's starting to talk about three things?
The topic.
What do we
Uh,
call that in an essay?
the thesis statement.
Very good. The thesis statement. She says they take real-time data and put it back into the product. They tap into local entrepreneurial talent and they do incredible marketing. So I know that normally when we're writing an essay, we take our thesis statement. It's usually one sentence. We put it at the end of the hook. But here, things are divided a little bit differently. And that's fine. I mean, remember, she's not writing an essay. She's doing a presentation. We're just learning from her presentation. But she does have a hook and she does have a thesis statement. She lets us know that there's three things, she says three things we can learn from Coca Cola. And then she lists item one, item two, and item three. So then she starts talking about the differences and similarities between those three items when it comes to nonprofits and when it comes to Coca-Cola. So she says here, can you see this part that I have in pink, Melissa?
Yes. So let's start with the data.
Very
Yes.
good. So if we go up a little bit to the thesis statement, she says they take real-time data and put it back into the product. And then so when she starts, she says, let's start with the data. And she explains, what do we do with data? What does Coke do with data? And then let's look down here. Let's contrast that to development. When she says development, she means nonprofit. What does contrast mean? Similarity or difference?
Difference.
Means difference. So she's talked about what Coca-Cola does with data, and then she says, now let's see the difference with how nonprofits deal with data. Let's go down a little bit. Let's look at this paragraph right here. If you were writing an essay, what would you call this sentence? So what's the second thing Coke's good at? What would we call this?
A topic. Topic
Mm-hmm.
sentence.
Very good. Topic sentence. Excellent. So then she talks about, remember, I'm going to go back up to that thesis statement. She says, remember, we already talked about the first one, data. The second one was they tap into local entrepreneurial talent. So then when she says, what's the second thing that Coke's good at? They're good at tapping into that local entrepreneurial talent. And she talks about what Coca-Cola does with their local talent. And then she says, what is it that governments and NGOs can learn from Coke? So again, when she talks about governments and NGOs, she's talking about nonprofit, development work, non-government organization. And then she says that, and then if you read this section here, listen to her presentation, you'll see that she talks about, she gives examples of in India, how they're, and Ethiopia both have started using local entrepreneurial talent to get health aid, to get medical aid to people who live far away from a hospital or a clinic. So here, she's not talking about the differences. She's talking about, this is what nonprofits have learned from Coca Cola. They've learned to use local entrepreneurial talent, and she's using those examples of how in India and in Ethiopia they've learned from Coca Cola, and that they're sending medical care to places that are far from the city. Does that make sense, Melissa?
Yes.
You sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then she continues developing her ideas here. She continues giving examples and explaining why that's important. Now we're down to the third topic sentence if this was an essay. The third component of Coke's success is marketing. I'm going to go back up here again where she talks about, where she gave us that topic sentence. They do incredible marketing. So let's go down when she's going to talk about the third component of Coke's success is marketing. And she says that there's a difference between how nonprofits market and how Coke markets. Do you remember what the difference is, Melissa, from when you listened to the presentation?
On marketing.
Yeah. Do you remember what the difference is between Coke's marketing and nonprofit marketing?
No.
Oh, that's okay. Look
Try to
here.
rephrase.
She says
Okay.
Coca-Cola uses aspirational marketing, meaning that
Yeah.
they make people see what life can be
This.
like if they drink
Yeah, I
Coca-Cola, like
agree.
what people aspire to. But she says that when it comes to nonprofits, it's based on avoidance, not aspirations. So when nonprofits market, they do something very different. They always say, don't do drugs or this will happen. If you have unprotected sex, you might get a disease. You may get HIV. So it's all about kind of avoiding problems, not making people feel good about being safe. But then she also talks about an example of when her foundation has started trying to use aspirational marketing. So she talks about the differences, but she also talks about what her foundation has learned from Coca-Cola and how they're trying to make changes. See how she says, well, why is all of this so important? And then that's the so what that I was talking about a couple of minutes ago. That's the so what, that's the significance, that's the who cares, telling about why it's important. And then she gives an example. She uses a real life example showing why it's important that that nonprofits learn these lessons from Coca-Cola. Melissa, I'm going to stop the recording. Well, actually, no, let me not stop the recording here. I want to reiterate one point. This is not, Melinda Gates' presentation is not an 1101 compare contrast essay. It's a real life presentation. So we're using a real life presentation to see the parallels between this and an academic essay. And she's using the same parts of an essay that we use. And I want you guys to be able to recognize that in a real life presentation.